Hello, you're watching Shalom World News. I'm Donna Villa from Chicago, USA. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. A U.S. national survey shows students are still struggling to make up for the learning loss experienced during COVID-19. The impact of the pandemic continues to reverberate through the American school system 3 years after the deadly virus closed the vast majority of public schools in the spring of 2020. The Northwest Evaluation Association survey reveals that by spring 2022, sizable declines in student achievement were observed across grades, subjects, and several assessments. The NWEA researchers found that achievement gains in 2022-2023 lagged pre-pandemic trends, with the numbers falling short of the pre-pandemic averages by 1 to 19% in reading and by 6 to 15% in math. Meanwhile, a recent Real Clear Opinion research poll shows nationwide support for school choice has increased by 7% since the start of the pandemic. In the U.S. state of Texas, a fine arts academy has dismissed the efforts of homosexual activists to permit boys in the Singing Girls of Texas choir. The Fort Worth Academy of Fine Arts has prohibited boys from joining the choir meant for girls. It has also banned girls from being part of the Texas Boys Choir. Last month, the school board held a closed session vote to decide on using biological gender as a marker to separate both the choirs. Earlier, the so-called LGBT activists had asked the academy to permit gender identity as the benchmark to admit children in the choir. However, the school board changed the handbook to define both boys and girls based on their birth certificates. The board also decided that the original certificate must be presented as proof to join the choirs. Republican lawmakers in the U.S. state of Iowa passed legislation banning abortions after fetal cardiac activity is detected, which is around 6 weeks of pregnancy. Lawmakers passed the legislation following a special session convened by Republican Governor Kim Reynolds on Tuesday, July 11. The governor is expected to sign the bill into law on Friday, July 14. The new law mandates that a doctor does an ultrasound on a woman who requests an abortion to check for a fetal heartbeat. If the fetal heartbeat is detected, the procedure would be halted unless in medical emergencies and fetal anomalies. Abortion is also allowed in cases of rape and incest. Meanwhile, abortion provider Planned Parenthood has sued the Iowa government for the new abortion ban. Unless the court blocks the state from enforcing the law, it will go into effect immediately once the governor signs it. Meanwhile, in the state of Idaho, a new law banning minors from getting an abortion without parental consent has been challenged in court. 2 advocacy groups and a lawyer are suing the state over this new law. In May, Idaho enacted the law preventing minors from getting an abortion without parental approval in any state. Abortion at all stages of pregnancy is already prohibited in Idaho. Any violation will be considered a felony, and it is punishable by at least 2 or up to 5 years in prison. The law was challenged by the Legal Voice activist group in the federal court on Tuesday on behalf of Nampa lawyer Lourdes Matsumoto from the Northwest Abortion Access Fund and the Indigenous Idaho Alliance. The groups are arguing in court that the law is overly vague and goes against the First Amendment, right to discuss abortion with minors, and the Fourth Amendment, right to travel freely between states. The Catholic bishops of the United States are calling for the immediate release of Nicaraguan Bishop Rolando Alvarez of Matagalpa. Upon confirming the current facts of the bishop's status, Bishop David Malloy of the Rockford Diocese in Illinois issued a statement calling for the prelate's release from prison. The chairman of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Committee on International Justice and Peace, decried the unjust sentence on Bishop Alvarez, who was also stripped of his citizenship in February of this year. The USCCB has also urged the faithful to continue praying for the jailed prelate. Bishop Malloy also welcomed the recent Inter-American Court of Human Rights ruling mandating the immediate release of the Nicaraguan prelate. A Christian social worker from the United Kingdom is pursuing legal action after his employer rescinded a job offer citing his Christian stance on sexuality and marriage. Felix Ngole is set to sue Touchstone Support Leads at the Employment Tribunal after his job offer was withdrawn. Ngole landed his job at the National Health Services after being recruited as a mental health support worker by Touchstone Support Leads. However, the offer was withdrawn after the authorities learned of his recent legal victory over his right to freedom of speech. He made news in recent years by defeating his alma mater in a free speech lawsuit after being dismissed in 2016 for participating in a Facebook discussion opposing same-sex marriage. The Supreme Court of Sri Lanka has ordered former President Maithripala Sirisena, 4 other officials, and the state to pay a compensation of 311 million rupees to the victims of the Easter Sunday bombings. The suicide attacks claimed 269 lives in April 2019. The court ordered that Sirisena should pay a sum of 100 million rupees, while former police chief Pujith Jayasundara and former State Intelligence Service Director Nilantha Jayawardena each pay 75 million rupees. It also ordered payment from former Defense Minister Secretary Hemasiri Fernando with 50 million rupees, while former Chief of National Intelligence Sisira Mendes has with 10 million and the state with 1 million rupees as compensation. The 7-member bench said in its verdict that the state and the individual respondents must make their payment to the victims' fund maintained at the Office for Reparation. In the U.S. state of Wisconsin, lawmakers of the Republican Party have reintroduced bills that bans boys and men with gender dysphoria from taking part in women's sports. The bills also mandate that athletes be part of teams corresponding with sex given to them at birth. Authors of the bills, Barbara Dietrich and Dan Knodel, said that it was aimed at saving women's sports. The bills mandate that schools have to designate sports teams into 3 categories, namely male, female, or male and female. While one bill applies from kindergarten through 12th grade independent charter and private voucher schools, the other applies to the University of Wisconsin system and technical colleges. Separately, a federal judge has blocked a local school district policy that bans students from using bathrooms of members of the opposite sex. Judge Lynn Edelman of the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Wisconsin issued a temporary restraining order last week. It prohibits the Makwanego Area School District from the student privacy in restrooms and locker rooms policy. The annual pilgrimage of the Radio Maria family in Poland arrived at the famous Marian Shrine in Częstochowa on July 8th. The 2-day pilgrimage was attended by Deputy Prime Minister and President of the Law and Justice Party, Jarosław Kaczynski, and Deputy Prime Minister Jacek Sasin. Just before Holy Mass last Sunday, Kaczynski addressed the pilgrims, saying that they are going through a time when plans to undermine Polish sovereignty are openly formulated. He said the Church and the Holy Father are attacked so openly, brazenly, and falsely. The leader of the Law and Justice Party also said that the foundation of the nation, its values and customs are also under attack. In his homily, Archbishop Marek Jedrzejewski of Krakow said that the death of God in society means the end of freedom because the sense that follows everyone the right direction perishes. He warned believers that by eliminating God from society, that criterion that teaches people to distinguish between good and evil vanishes. The pilgrimage is one of the largest in Częstochowa every year, and it is hosted by its most popular Catholic radio in the country. Vandals knocked off 2 of the 4 sculptures from their pedestals at a Catholic church in the U.S. state of Massachusetts. The act of vandalism took place at the Our Lady of La Salette shrine on the grounds of the Holy Trinity Church in Westfield on Sunday morning. Church Secretary Annette Perry expressed her grief that someone could do that and said that the parishioners have been devastated by the senseless act. Both the church and the Westfield Police Department are investigating the incident. The shrine was constructed in 1958 on the church land facing Elm Street just north of downtown Westfield. The shrine honors the Blessed Virgin who appeared to 2 young children while they were tending sheep in the French Alps parish of La Salette. The shrine had 3 statues of the Virgin surrounded by a flower garden and an area for spiritual reflection. A trilateral summit in the central Italian city of Ancona on July 10, representatives from Italy, Slovenia, and Croatia vowed to combat migrant trafficking and international organized crime. The 3 nations committed to working together in stopping the flow of unauthorized immigration and prevent migrant deaths at sea. Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani pressed the positive results of the meeting and urged the European Union partners to move forward. This would entail joint defense of Europe's external borders and assistance to Africa in addressing the underlying issues that lead people to flee their country of origin. Containing migration flow is only part of the wide-range cooperation initiatives of the 3 countries. The pro-life Portuguese Federation for Life will hold a Rosary for Life on August 2nd as part of the World Youth Day in Lisbon. The initiative will take place in the Church of Nossa Senhora do Rosário de Fátima in the presence of St. John Paul II's relics. The Federation said the Rosary for Life would be a way of publicly fighting for unborn children, the neediest, mothers in difficulty, the sick, the elderly around the world. Bishop Nuno Almeida of Braganza Miranda Diocese will lead the praying of the Rosary. The meditations composed by Catholics from the Portuguese Federation for Life based on the Gospels and the Church's magisterium will be led by young people from different nations. According to estimates from the International Organization for Migration, more than 3 million people have been displaced by the violence between armed factions in Sudan, which started about 3 months ago. The figures released reports over 2.4 million people have been internally displaced and more than 730,000 have been migrated to neighboring countries. As the conflict continues to rage in Sudan, United Nations humanitarians have expressed alarm at the surge in the number of people fleeing across the border to Chad. World Food Programme's Chad Country Director Pierre Honorat said that 20,000 people have crossed into Chad just last week. The majority of refugees have either left the capital Khartoum or Darfur, and United Nations officials have said that Sudan could slide into civil war as regional and international mediation efforts have failed. The future of Christians in Iraq is once again in limbo, with the President of the Republic withdrawing the institutional recognition granted to the office held by Chaldean Patriarch Luis Rafael Sacco. President Abdul Latif Rashid canceled Decree 147 that granted sanction to the pontifical appointment of the cardinal as the head of the Chaldean Church in Iraq and around the world. The decree also ratifies the patriarch's hold over the church's assets. This decree was issued by the previous president Jalal Talabani on July 10, 2013. For over a century, the new patriarch used to receive recognition of his office from the king and the president of the country after being appointed by the Pope. Now, with the withdrawal of the presidential decree, Cardinal Sacco will end up losing legal control of the goods and properties under his care. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us tomorrow. In the meantime, you can visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.